Annuncio vobis gaudium magnum. Habemus Papam.
The conclave in the Sistine Chapel has just elected a new leader of the Roman Catholic Church, Pope Leo XIV. The American-Peruvian Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost became the new Bishop of Rome. Among the congratulations from world leaders, President Putin's has been one of the early ones. So what's in it for Russia, Russian Christianity, and Russian Christians? Even before the formal split and the Great Schism of the year 1054, when the Roman Catholic Church and Eastern Orthodox Church centered in Byzantium officially parted ways, both ecclesiastical bodies represented two different world powers. Since those times, one stands for the global West and another for the global East. Go into the history of these two religious and, at many points in time, geopolitical superpowers would be an impossible task for just one YouTube video. Let's discuss the recent trends and events in the context of today's politics and interreligious dialogue. In most of the 20th century, the Soviet Union was quite suspicious, if not openly hostile, towards the Holy See in Rome. As a formerly atheist state, religion, especially such an ancient, powerful and highly organized structure as the Roman Catholic Church, was seen as an ally of imperialism and capitalism. Like any religious or social organization with its leadership abroad, and in the so-called capitalist country, Soviet Catholics faced harsh persecutions, suspected of spying or at least falling under the influence of their Western leaders. Nevertheless, there were many attempts to establish certain diplomatic contacts through religious channels. One of the most notable ones was made by Metropolitan Nicodim, the key church diplomat of the 1960s and 70s. Nicodim personally met at least 3 popes and was in contact with many important Roman Catholic prelates in an attempt to formally establish diplomatic relationships not only between churches but ultimately between the Soviet Union and the Vatican State. Metropolitan Nicodim even died of a heart attack in the presence of newly elected Pope John Paul I as a member of the Russian Orthodox delegation. The Pope read a prayer over the dying Metropolitan. This fact, and also the fact that John Paul himself died in less than a month of a similar heart attack, caused many rumors and conspiracy theories about their deaths. See a video about Metropolitan Nicodim on my channel. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, despite the common liberalization of Russian society, the Russian Orthodox Church remained mostly antagonistic, if not openly hostile towards the Roman Catholic Church. Many influential bishops did their best to make the papal visit simply unthinkable. Back then, the Pope was John Paul II. He was not only reputed as a powerful negotiator and a peacemaker, but he himself grew up in a socialist Poland, spoke some Russian, and had previously established relationships with Mikhail Gorbachev. Many voices saw any attempts at negotiations or even short visits of a pope to Russia as militant proselytism, an attempt at the faithful and canonical territory of the Russian Orthodox Church. In 2016, Patriarch Kirill somewhat broke this trend, yet in a very peculiar way. After the annexation of Crimea and an alleged military participation in the civil war in Ukraine, the first set of sanctions was imposed on Russia. Russia gradually started to develop international isolation that would peak in 2022 with an active military invasion into Ukraine. The meeting of Patriarch Kirill with Pope Francis was seen by many as an attempt to rebuild bridges. Patriarch Kirill still had the remains of his prior reputation as a liberal bishop and an experienced church diplomat, a former personal assistant to Metropolitan Nicodim. Some people believed that Kirill could become a voice of reason in Russia, and with his alleged influence on Putin, he would at least soften his aggressive foreign policy. A very powerful leader and experienced strategist, Patriarch Kirill saw this meeting as beneficial to himself and his church. Growing tensions with the ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople that would result in the break of fellowship in 2018, and growing international isolation, which also affected the church, forced the Patriarch to act. The meeting itself resulted in a very formal and empty common declaration, but the message has been sent to the world by Patriarch Kirill. The meeting took place in Cuba, a former Soviet satellite and now a country still heavily dependent on Russia, yet with a historically Catholic majority. The Pope was still not allowed in Russia, but diplomatically the place looked very good. Moreover, the Russian side did everything in their power to make it look like the meeting of equals. It is impossible to claim superiority over the Bishop of Rome, and the second best option is to represent the world's most powerful alternative to the Catholic Church. Despite the canonical hierarchies and being the fifth in the canonical hierarchy of Orthodox churches, the Russian Church was represented as the ecclesiastical power of half of the world. The Patriarch was meant to be equal to the Pope. Don't get me wrong. When it comes to real political power and influence, the Russian Orthodox Church is really the second Christian church. However, although the rest of the Eastern Orthodox churches are smaller, together they are a significant part of universal Christianity, representing many different countries, cultures, regions, and millions of people. From the canonical standpoint, the Bishop of Rome was meeting with the leader of one of the autocephalous churches. From the way the Russian side made sure it would look like, it was a meeting of two equal global Christian leaders, representing the West and the East. Pope Francis will be remembered as the Pope who strived for peace and global justice, whether or not we agree with his interpretations or that he was successful in his attempts. The first thing he tried to do when the war in Ukraine broke out was to refer to the relationships he believed he had with his fellow church leader, bishop, and brother in faith, Patriarch Kirill. He tried to reason with him, and after seeing Kirill avoiding real discussion and reading propaganda points from a piece of paper, the Pope added a bitter remark that the Bishop of Moscow should not be an altar boy of Putin. His attempts to bring peace to Ukraine and Russia were meant to fail. As for Russia, despite all diplomatic relationships, the Roman Catholic Church is still largely perceived as a rival and a foe. And when it comes to Ukraine, despite a very significant representation of both Roman Catholics and Greek Catholics, the dominant religious power is Orthodox Christianity. And the situation with different competing Orthodox churches is too complex to let the foreign religious superpower interfere. So, what about the new Pope, Leo XIV? What does his papacy change for Russia and what to expect from it? First, let's not forget that Russia has much more than just one Christian denomination. Russian Catholics, although a relatively small minority, have strong roots in the country, and nowadays more and more consist of local Russian converts without a background in traditionally Catholic nations. For most of the Russian Protestants, the election of a new pope will not likely change much, apart from some marginal theological discussions. As for the further relationships between the Russian Orthodox Church and Rome, we can only speculate. At this point, Pope Leo seems much more pragmatic than Francis. At the same time, much of his address from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica was dedicated to peace. The election of the first pope from the United States during the second presidency of Donald Trump, actively working on establishing peace between Russia and Ukraine, might be quite symbolic. At the same time, just like with previous popes, his influence on Ukraine is quite limited, and on Russia it is minimal. Any relationships with the Vatican, that the Russian Orthodox Church or the Russian state have had are mostly used for symbolic diplomatic acts and rarely have any practical consequences. What do you think about the new Pope? What do you expect of him? Will he have any influence on peace processes around the world? Share in the comments. Please like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you all next time.